Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome this evening, Central and South Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, and I am Chairman of the meeting. Usual preliminary announcements before we get going. Firstly, as all of our planning meetings are, they are captured for YouTube channel, and you can review them at any later stage. And then we can also have people sometimes following us online now. The camera is just forward of the public area, pointing this way. So if you're sitting in the public gallery, you are not captured. But when you come forward to speak, you will be recorded by YouTube. And it's important for that reason that we use the microphones. However, will speak to the petitioners when we get to that point. Fire alarms. One's not expected this evening, so if it does sound, we will be evacuating. The best way out is through the doors you came into. Off to the left-hand side, you'll see another set of double doors and then down through the spiral staircase. Don't worry, we will be going with you. If they're blocked for any reason, there are fire exits behind us. Importantly, mobile phones and tablets, if they could all be please turn to silent, that would be most helpful to prevent disturbance as the meeting gets going. And residents' feedback forms, they are provided for you, available on the desk. If you wish to provide comments about the way the meeting has been run, then please do so. We do encourage it. It helps us to improve. Your comments are submitted to the Democratic Services, not to me, and Democratic Services will take whatever action is necessary to improve our performance. A little bit about the way the meeting is run. Although we're meeting in public, it isn't a public meeting. The only people that can address the committee are petitioners or agents in response to a petition, and ward councillors on behalf of their residents. So members of the public here otherwise, I regret you cannot make contribution, and if you were to do so, I would ask you to refrain, and we wouldn't be allowed to take any notice of it anyway. So that is the position with regard to public speaking. The meeting is going to be in two parts. Part one is the ordinary planning applications, the one of which people are generally most interested in, and that is, as I say, held in public. We do have some items in part two, which is the private part of the meeting. There will be a break between the two. And the second part of the meeting is regarding enforcement items that can end up in prosecutions and enforcement activity. So the discussion isn't helpful in a public domain. However, the agenda item and the outcome of the debate are published. We'll speak to the part two when we get to it. A lot of people around the table. You may be interested in who they are and how the committee runs. The committee is made up of councillors, and they have the voting rights in it. And as chairman, I only vote in the event of a tie. Now, I'll introduce to you the councillor members this evening. On my far left-hand side, Councillor John Oswald, Councillor Mahinda Bera, and Councillor Janet Duncan. On my far right-hand side, Councillor Simon Arnold, Councillor Duncan Flynn, Nicola Brightman, Councillor Sharia Ahmed Walana, and Councillor Roy Chamdal. The other people around the table are officers of the council, and they're here to assist the councillors in decision making. Far left-hand side, Nicole Cameron, our principal lawyer. Neil Fraser, Democratic Services, clerks the meeting. James Rogers, head of planning, and will give expert planning advice. Meg Harani is an experienced planner, can also give advice, but this evening he's presenting the applications to the committee. And next to him is Amit Akram, who is our highways engineer and will answer matters on highways. Let's quickly go through the agenda items, if I may. Okay, so agenda item one is apologies for absence.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillors Tuckwell, Chapman and Dillon, with Councillors Flynn, Arnold and Oswell present as their respective substitutes.
Thank you very much. You're almost welcome. Declarations of interest in matters coming before the meeting this evening. Are there any additional declarations? No, thank you very much. Item 3 is to sign and receive the minutes of the previous meeting, which I was not present at. That's on the 3rd of September. Are they agreed? Thank you very much. Item 4, no matters have been notified in advance or urgent. And item 5 is to confirm that businesses will be in part 1 and part 2. As I said earlier. We will get on to the main part of the agenda, and I will adjust the running order very slightly. There will be the petition application first, number 6, and I will then take number 13. That is correct, isn't it? 13. The reason for doing that is that there was a large public interest at the first time that was heard, and I also note that the councillor is present and wishes to speak. So we will take that to allow members of the public who may have attended specifically for that item not to have to wait to the very end to hear what we're saying. Okay, so without further ado, if we could turn please now to agenda item 6, 27A Church Road, Cowley. Ms. Harani.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for the demolition of the existing bungalow and the redevelopment of the site to provide a two-storey building with rooms in the roof to provide 6 flats, 4 by 1 bed and 2 by 2 bed. If I can, before I go any further, bring members' attention to the addendum sheet. Members will note that we've received revisions, minor revisions to the plans, which overcome reasons 5 and 3 and 5 relating to the balconies and the rooms in the roof space not having sufficient outlook. These reasons have been overcome by the provision of screens to the balconies, protecting the privacy of adjoining occupiers, and by the provision of roof lights at a level which would provide outlook to the front of the site. Members or officers have also reassessed the impact on adjoining occupiers in terms of the windows in the side-facing property of number 25, and those 2 windows in the side are secondary windows which are served by windows which are not affected by the development, and therefore reason 2 is also removed from the reasons that are set out on pages 9 and 10. So that leaves 4 other reasons for refusal, and the main issues for members to consider is whether the siting and size and bulk of the development and its design is acceptable within the conservation area. And to this end, if I can point members to the Conservation Officer's comments, which are set out in great detail on pages 16 to 18, and they clearly summarise or set out the reasons why the design of the development and its size and scale is not acceptable within the site or within the area that it's located in. That is the area. You'll see that the yellow striped area is the extent of the conservation area. The brown buildings are the listed buildings. There's 2 of them, the church here and the one to the rear of the site, which is the old rectory, this one, and that's called the Bell House. So the church and the Bell House. A new rectory was provided in the 70s, I think, and that rectory is now separated from the church and is converted into flats. So, as I said, the main reason for refusal relating to the impact on the street scene. If I can just go through the plans. This is the existing building. It's a fairly nondescript bungalow, and these are the new revisions. If I can just point out the revisions, there are screens provided to these balconies, and if I go to the elevations, there are roof lights provided to the rooms which overcome those reasons. In essence, they don't change the size or scale or bulk of the building, and therefore those reasons, or that reason, stands. There is also issues in relation to the increased use of the access. If I can go back, this access, which is located in this position here, serves not only the bungalow here but also the properties to the rear, and it's the increased use of that access which is an issue. There's a bus stop in this location right outside the site, and then there's a bus stop approximately in this location on the opposite side of the road. And the increased use, our highways engineers are stating that the increased use of the access is unacceptable. So I can just go through the photographs. That is the looking at the access towards the rear of the site. That is the site itself, which is located immediately to the left of this photograph. And then that's the listed building to the rear, the Bell House, which is this property here. That's number 25. And the two windows that officers referred to are these two. They are served by windows in this position here. Again, this is the access to the rear, which shows that it serves this property as well as this one, and also the application site. This is the rear of the site, and then the adjoining property on the other side, number 29. And then looking towards Church Road from the back of the site, or from the rear. So in summary, your officers object to the design and size and scale of the development and its highways impacts. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harani. Mr. Parsons, present, do you wish to speak to the committee? If you would like to come forward, sir, make yourself comfortable at one of the chairs there. You will see before you a microphone, and towards the front edge there's a button, and that is a toggle on off switch for the microphone. When you press it on, the light will come up, the microphone will be live. You have 5 minutes speaking time, and I must limit you to that 5 minutes to be fair to everybody. We help you with the lights in front of me here. The green lights will show for 4 minutes, amber lights for 1, and red I will need to bring you to a close regardless of where you are in your petition. Okay? So at your own time, once you toggle on the microphone, we will commence. Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, lovely. On behalf of the petitioners, I'd like to thank the committee for this opportunity to speak. Furthermore, we thank the planning officer, the other borough departments involved, and the ward councillors for their efforts leading to the report conclusion that this application be refused. We disagree with the windows being secondary in 25 Church Road, but we agree with the report's non-standard reasons for refusal and recognise that reason 6 is more a building design technical objection. We must also comment that many misrepresentations and inaccuracies were recognised within the developer's planning and access statement, and we have already expressed several concerns with the heritage document commissioned in support of that planning statement. We would be happy to share those thoughts on what we deem those misrepresentations to be, should the committee wish it. Whilst all residents have their own personal reasons to object, the common runs expressed were the character despoilation of Church Road, traffic safety, lack of provision on on-site parking, the scale, size of the proposed flat development, and the desire to preserve the historic interest and character of St Lawrence Church Conservation Area. Residents in the immediate vicinity, including myself, had additional quality of life, health, and human rights concerns, which are well documented within our objections and the planning report before you. In this forum, we would like to bring to your attention 3 additional matters, first of which has has been recorded in the report before you and changed. It concerns an action by reason of ancient lights that could be brought because 2 of my lounge windows would be light and outlook blocked by the proposed developer's side brick wall, shown as being around just over 2 metres from them. These are primary windows in my lounge, and I have photographs as evidence of that. The second is a hazardous left-hand turn into 27A's entrance. It's almost a U-turn, about a 150-degree turn that forces the turning vehicle out into the oncoming traffic to enter the property. A danger aggravated by the expected increase in vehicle movements, deliveries, etc., the scale of this development introduces. The third point concerns the land registry documents for 27A Church Road. Research revealed that under its schedule of restrictive covenants, it states that no houses shall be erected save that of detached houses. It also substantiates the beneficiary of the covenants and that they are still valid and enforceable, a fact confirmed by legal consultation. This development is definitely not a detached house. We respectfully request and strongly urge the committee to endorse the recommendation to refuse this application, add in a qualification that any subsequent application must respect the current schedule of restrictive covenants present in the land registry record of 27A Church Road dated August 2019. To conclude, we believe that rejection would reinforce the borough's motto that they put residents first and will uphold the historic interest and integrity of the conservation area, a need that the borough's conservation officer clearly established is required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parsons. Colleagues, are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, sir. I wonder if I could just ask you about the point you made that your lounge windows face this proposed flank wall,
Yep.
and you said they were primary windows.
Yes.
Are there any other windows in your lounge?
There are other windows in the lounge.
But are these the main ones?
They are primary windows because if we block those off, the lighting in my living room, I believe, and I think we could show, would be reduced by at least 30 to 40% natural lighting.
So the 2 windows there provide almost half the light to the room. Is that what you're
I'm saying that
there?
those windows provide more than 30% of the light.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is helpful. I would just like to caveat those assessments there, that they are being given as lay opinions here and without any basis of assessments. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Parsons. If I could invite you please to turn off your microphone and return to your seat. Is the applicant Mr. Jason Day or the agent Mr. Rahaja here and wish to speak? No? In that case, I understand Councillor Mills, you wish to speak to the committee. You'd like to come forward? You have 3 minutes speaking time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This evening I'm speaking in support of the petitioners and local residents in Cowley who have been in close contact with me since becoming aware of this application. As has been mentioned by officers, this is the demolition of a bungalow in Church Road and proposed to be replaced by a 6-property development, 2 one-bed and 4 two-bedroom flats, which starts off an initial alert of a classic case of overdevelopment, and again, as officers reported, highlights the size and scale of this proposed development, far from in keeping with what is existing there. As I say, it would be in vast contrast to the existing street scene in Church Road, and as highlighted in the report, it would have a hugely detrimental impact on the existing and preserved conservation area and nearby listed buildings, making it contrary to our own Hillingdon plan. Furthermore, the proposal does not provide adequate parking facilities for the development, but probably more worryingly, create safety concerns in terms of access to the main road of Church Road, as highlighted by the petitioners. But this is both from also a vehicle and, more worryingly, a pedestrian perspective, given its close proximity to the bus stop. This application is not considered to be aesthetically pleasing, which would provide a very problematic, detrimental and unsightly outlook for neighbouring properties. Whilst I note that the addendum highlights some last-minute amendments have been made to try and address this, they do not go far enough to mitigate this as an issue. In addition to this, not only does the application cause issues for nearby properties, but it is also classified as providing a poor standard of living for any future occupant. I think the summary that I'd bring to the committee's attention from that is that this demonstrates a lack of consideration from the applicant, not just for the people that may end up living in the proposed properties, but also for the local community. The officer's report is very comprehensive and thorough and highlights a number of reasons why this application should be refused. The primary one I would again highlight is the size and bulk of this development, particularly in relation to those nearby. I hope those refusal recommendations will be endorsed by the committee this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mills. Colleagues, any questions? Thank you very much. I invite you to return. 2 issues I would like assistance, please, from officers. The ancient rights to light, I'll ask our head of planning to comment on that one, but first we may turn to restricted covenants and the extent to which the committee is bound by restricted covenants, and for that I'll ask Nicole Cameron to address this.
I can actually address both the issues. So the ancient rights to light is something that you cannot consider. It's not a material planning consideration. And the same approach is in relation to restrictive covenants. There is a separate legal regime that those that have the benefit of that restrictive covenant can go down.
Okay, I'm sorry I can't take any further comment from you, Mr. Parsons. I regret. The legal advice here is that the issues of ancient rights to light and the land registry restricted covenants are enforceable in another domain and are not matters that we can consider here. So our hands are tied there by planning law, okay? So we have before us now the officer's report. We must consider the petition made and the representations made by Councillor Mill. I open this up to the floor. Councillor Chamdal.
Thank you, Chairman. The report states that even with the reasons we have taken off or refused, I think there's still plenty there. The parking is not there. The safety, trees and hedges, I think it's been mentioned. It doesn't harmonise. I just think the report states it all, and I'll move to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Oswald, Councillor Duncan, is a question first, I believe, is there? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I do think that I agree with the officer's recommendation. I just find if they're putting in privacy screens to the rear balconies, how high are these privacy screens? Because we don't have the plans here. I know they were shown there, but...
yeah, sorry about that. They were received very late in the day,
yes,
but they're 1.8 metres high. 6 feet.
So that's going to create quite a sort of cupboard-like effect for these balconies, isn't it? You go out onto a balcony and it's like going, if it's 1.8 metres, that's 6 feet.
It's 1.8 is the standard sort of screening height that we've had in quite a lot of proposals for flats. So this is quite a typical arrangement.
Usually that's been at the side. Is this at the side and the rear? or just the side?
It's just the side, so you would get a view of the rear amenity area, but not of the adjoining properties' amenity areas.
I understand now, yeah. Because I was wondering whether this was to do with overlooking of the property at the rear as well. Wasn't quite clear to me.
It is of sufficient distance to comply.
Thank you. I do have concerns as well about the petitioner speaking about there are 2 windows in the side, and although they are secondary windows, if there are 2 there providing light and only 1 at the front, then that could actually affect the amenities. So even though we have policies that say secondary windows, we tend not to consider them, there possibly is some effect here if we had known perhaps in a bit more detail beforehand about the impact that could have. Maybe it would be possible to include that in the amenities affected. The other thing is, in terms of the design, it's all very vertical, whereas everything else in terms of windows and fenestration, other detailing of properties as far as we can see, is very much horizontal. So I agree that the eye doesn't carry along the street scene, very consistently in this case. So I don't have any problems with that, but just wanted clarification about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Oswald, you wish to...
Yeah, thanks very much. I will be brief, Chairman. Thank you. I think even... Councillor Chandell's covered it, basically. I think this is slightly out of character as well. Even with the late amendments, I think there is probably enough on this report to refuse it, Chairman, so I'll second Councillor Chandell's proposal.
Thank you. I'll just bring in Head of Planning before we take it.
If I can just give a very simple answer to this issue of the impact of number 25. The reason, basic reason officers are not putting it forward anymore as a reason of refusal is because you've got that front window that does give outlook to the lounge. We wouldn't win an appeal with that as a refusal reason. So effectively we're taking the view that there's little point putting forward a refusal reason that we know full well we won't be able to win an appeal on, whereas all your officers feel that there are robust refusal reasons, reasons numbers 1, 4, 5 and 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've had the motion put and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please? This is refusal, subject to the changes of deletions, conditions 2, 3 and 6. And that is everybody. Thank you very much. That application has been refused. We now may turn to agenda item 13, number 3, Cambridge Road. I'm sorry, we're going to have to just rejig the presentation, but that may assist other members of the public present. Okay. Mr. Harani, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Members will recall that this application was deferred at committee on the 6th of August as members felt that insufficient information was available in relation to the impact on number 1 Cambridge Road in particular. Officers were requested to visit the site and reconsider the application as a whole, and they've done that, and hopefully a comprehensive assessment has been made of the impact on the adjoining occupiers. We do consider that there is an impact on adjoining occupiers on both sides, and additional reasons for refusal have been put on for those issues. There's also a reassessment in terms of the technical standards, the housing standards, the government's size and amenity standards, internal standards, and condition or reason 5 relating to the size of the bedrooms has also been added. So with those additional reasons relating to the impact on number 1 and number 5 and the size of the second bedrooms being under the required amount, we are recommending refusal for 5 reasons as opposed to 3 previously. If you members just refresh members' minds about the plans. They haven't changed from the previous. These are additional photographs to the one that members saw. This is inside number 1, and these are the windows that are affected. That's looking from the window towards the rear garden. And that's the back. So the windows photographs were taken from this one and one here. And the application site is this one. The adjoining occupiers at number 5. Members also asked us to look at the impact on the annex. This is the annex to the rear of the site. We're not recommending a refusal reason related to that. A, because it is quite a distance from the back of the site, more than 21 metres, and also it does have substantial screening as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Goddard, do you wish to speak? If you'd like to come forward. Thank you. Remind you have 3 minutes speaking time.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members of the committee. I won't detain you long with this, but I feel it is necessary to emphasise that this application is a bit of history. The first application was submitted on the 12th of December last year, 2018, immediately opposed by a petition. There have been numerous iterations of the plans. As you've heard, it reached committee on the 6th of August last and was deferred because of the concerns about overlooking and overshadowing that weren't considered in the report. I should emphasise there is no second petition relating to this amended report, but I'm sure you'll appreciate that the last 10 months or so have been a period of concern, frustration for the petitioners, and in particular for the immediate neighbours to the application site. I think we now have an officer's report which recommends refusal on 5 grounds, and I'm most grateful to the officers for the diligent, positive and constructive way in which they've responded to the petitioners' concerns raised at the 6th of August meeting. I must say that I fully support the officers' recommendations, and it's clear that the 5 grounds for refusal collectively and individually illustrate the overdevelopment of the site that this proposal represents. Or perhaps another way of expressing it is that essentially this is trying to condense a quart into a pint pot. Beyond the 5 reasons for refusal, which are technically admissible, I could cite at least another 4 reasons why the residents and in the neighbourhood would see this development to be detrimental to their style of living and to the local environment, but I won't dwell on those. So members of the committee, please, I urge you to confirm your support for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Questions at all? Questions of the... No. I would just like to say how pleased I am that the additional value that petitions can bring that help councillors make more informed decisions. And it shows the value of the petition process, that this committee does consider what is being said and does act upon it. And I'm grateful that this is an example that we can show. Sorry, now I interrupted 2 people there. Councillor Duncan was early to try and come in, and then Councillor Chandel.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think we looked at this in great detail before and heard very valuable information from residents, which enabled officers to check on this. I'm very happy with the officer's recommendation and would like to move that unless there are any other points of discussion members have.
Thank you. Councillor Chandel?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that's agreed because we looked at it last time. We weren't happy with it. We got it sent back. You've done a great job, and I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, can I have a show of hands on this one, please? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That application has been refused for the reasons, including the additional reasons brought about following the deferment. Thank you. We'll now return to the published agenda list. So we're now taking agenda item 7, the footpath at the junction of Keith Road and Station Road, Hayes.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for another mast. Members will recall that we've had a number reported to this committee already. This is the rollout of 5G, and the mast would be 20 metres, and the, I can get to it. And there'll be 7 new cabinets associated with it. Within the addendum, information has been set out regarding the size of those cabinets and the cabinets that would be removed. If I can just point out on the site plan, the actual siting of the mast and cabinets is in this location. The existing mast and cabinets are in this vicinity here. So it's a replacement of the mast from one position to the other side of the road and further down. Officers object to the, in particular, the size and height of the monopole and the number and size of the cabinets that are proposed. It is a considerable increase in the overall number as well as the increase in the size of the cabinets. Members will note from the addendum that there's only one cabinet which is at 1,500 metres high, and in the proposed cabinets there are 5 cabinets which are over or close to 6 foot, which would be 1,800 metres plus, plus 2 cabinets which are 1,200 and 1,300. So the increase in the size of the cabinets is considerable, and that will clearly have an impact on the street scene. If I can point out to members the comments of the town centre team leader, there are considerable improvements being made in this area, which are being made and which are proposed to be done. Considerable amount of money being spent to improve the visual amenity of the area, and she feels that the addition of a mast would impact unduly on this. So officers have taken that into account and are recommending refusal on that basis as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Again, just to bring the head of planning in for an additional comment.
So there's a few additional comments I'd like to make. In a general sense, it'd be wrong for me not to flag that there's a lot of material coming out of central government saying that all decision makers should be helping and facilitating the expansion of the 5G network. And I think it can be taken as read that that will at some point include planning inspectors as well. But I have to say I have major concerns with this particular proposal because of its precise location. Obviously, as a committee, you need to determine this mast based on where it is proposed to be located. It will be highly visible from outside of the new Crossrail station, and I cannot help but think it's going to detract from the wider street scene. What I would say, I hope committee don't mind me requesting delegated authority to have see if there's anything I can add to the refusal reason should members agree the officer recommendation. So just to be absolutely clear, there's very detailed comments, as Major Irani outlined from the Town Centre's team leader, that there's considerable investment going into the surrounding street scene, and I just would wish to make sure that that's absolutely clear in the refusal reason. It is referenced in the new emerging townscape of Hayes Town Centre, but I think we could probably slightly expand upon that. So I'd be grateful if the committee do agree the refusal reason, they'd give me authority to just slightly flesh out the actual visual harm this proposal could cause. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roger. I'm pleased at that because this is a pretty standard refusal reason, and what I wouldn't wish to give the impression is that we're just refusing the development. this is something that as a council we support the economic development of the borough and Hayes Town, and we welcome 5G. However, we do believe that there are better sightings for this, that with some discussion we can find a better outcome for both the telecoms company and for the borough itself. Because the impact at the moment is detrimental and will have a detrimental impact on the investment that's gone on. So that is the long way of saying over to you now, colleagues. Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I'd certainly agree with any additional recommendations that may be made to refuse this. I wouldn't mind £1 for every time I've walked around that corner. I think I'd be quite well off. I'm not against 5G. I don't think any of us are, because it's going to be an improvement. Well, I hope so anyway, but it's in the wrong place. James has just said that. And works in the town, I think they were started on Monday on this road up there, Station Road. I'm pretty sure they started on Monday. And you're right, there's a lot of money being spent in and on Hayes Town at the moment, and rightly so. It's about time that something happened there. I don't like the recommendation. I do like the recommendation. I'm not keen on the application, and I'll move the officer's recommendation with any additional recommendations, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chamdal, you indicated?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, quite right. I think we need to be careful in what reasons we give and why, and I think this is a classic example. It is in the wrong place, as Councillor Oswald said. The size of the cabinets, the volume of the cabinets, if you are going to put that money, it needs to be somewhere where really, they are away from this location here. So I'm happy to second that with the delegated authority to head of planning.
Councillor Duncan, you still indicating you wish to come in? My apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Just a small point. As this is on the entrance into Hayes Town Centre proper, and it's also on a rise. You're actually going uphill at that point. So it's not as if this is something tucked away. You cannot avoid it at any price. And the size of these cabinets, I mean, some of them are 2 metres by 1,800 high, another one's 1,200 by 1,780. They're large, bulky things, and if 5G is going to need that kind or level of cabinet, then we need to think about locating them in places where there can be landscaping or some kind of this is particularly sensitive site, but I think anywhere in the borough, if we're going to have that, we need to be asking developers for some kind of screening, because that's going to be so huge within the borough. So yes, thank you to officers. I'm very happy to agree delegation to make a more bespoke reason for refusal, but I agree.
Thank you. Motions have been made and seconded. Can I have a show of hands on this one, please? That is everybody, thank you. With the delegated authority to strengthen condition 2 to bespoke it to the circumstance here. But, yeah, the refusal reason 1. Thank you. Agenda item 8, the Navnat Centre Printing House, Lane, Hayes. Ms. Harani.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for an extension to create a new dining hall and a new garden terrace. Members will recall that Planning Permission was given not very long ago for a play area close to this extension or proposed extension. The site is in the green belt, and therefore officers have assessed whether the size of the development is acceptable, and it's set out on page 53 that the proposal would result in a 43% increase in development, which, as our members will know, generally a 50% increase is seen as acceptable within the green belt on the original size of the building, and therefore it is within that, and so your officers consider that its impact on the green belt is limited. It is also set almost within the envelope of the existing buildings. If I can just show that, that's the constraints showing the site within the green belt, and the existing. And if I can just point this out, so in essence the extension is going between these 2 points here, so it's just extending across there, so it is almost hidden by the existing buildings. These are existing elevations and existing photographs showing the recently added children's play area. So this is the proposed site plan, and the brown areas that you'll see, so that is the extent of the extension here. This element is existing and this element is existing, so it's between, and this element is as well, so it's between existing buildings, and this is the outdoor terrace that's proposed. So its impact visually in terms of the green belt is seen against the backdrop of the existing buildings. And that's the extension. Again, it's this element here. These are existing buildings, and that in essence shows the size and scale of the extension. This is the frontage of the site. That's not to be changed at all, and that's the rear. And in essence, it's between this building and this one. So we feel that its impact on the greenbelt is limited. Its impact on adjoining residents, which are some distance away, is also limited. There is some concern with regard to the conditions in terms of the condition 6 and whether that's too restrictive, because it limits noise emitted from the site, and this is an application for an extension, and therefore we should really be considering conditions which relate to the extension rather than the whole site. And so officers are suggesting that the noise emitted from the back edge of the extension is limited, and also that it's limited within certain times, so from say 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening to 7 o'clock in the morning, and officers are therefore requesting delegated authority to the head of planning to change that condition to reflect that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, open it for discussion. Councillor Turnell.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that the point that makes a rage, that was the only one for me, that the noise 5 decibel below. I think that's not even a whisper, I think. But I think otherwise the report's fine. It's, the green belt, it's hidden. You can see from the plans. It's in between the two buildings, quite rightly. And I would like to go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't like to go with officer's recommendation. I would not. This is a very large development. I did not know that somehow we had a policy saying that 50% was acceptable. It's certainly not acceptable in adjoining authorities, and they defend their green belt very vigorously. This is going to infill this area here where there's all seating completely. This major development. And the fact that you're saying this building started life as a sports club with sports ground around it. It was EMI sports ground. Then it went to BAA, I think, British Airports Authority. Now suddenly it's a community centre with all that involves, including events, occasions, noise, disturbance. I did not know that it changed from something that was ancillary to sports grounds. And as a community centre, there's obviously going to be demands for, weddings and parties and that kind of thing. And, this is just going to get more and more. It's also it's not flat roofed. Yes, the fact that you see on a plan that there's a line that joins two lines, yes, that makes it perfectly all right. I'm afraid it doesn't in my book, so I'm terribly sorry, but I shall be voting against this on unacceptable development in Greenbelt.
Thank you very much. Before we move to the vote, I would just ask our head of planning to comment around the interpretation of extensions of existing buildings in Greenbelt and where past decisions have lay on that one.
Well, 50% is one of these sort of rule of thumb things that's often used by planning inspectors, and it's been mentioned at planning committees at this council for a very long time. So I've been in numerous meetings where the concept of up to 50% as a rule of thumb has been mentioned, and committees of this authority have been quite happy applying that as a rule of thumb. The other point I'd say is, and I feel I have to say this, I don't think we should draw inferences from what other authorities do, because London Borough of Ealing have allowed a massive extension to I think it's the SKLP club on our borough boundary, and I know that members in the South Ruislip area are very familiar with the proposal I'm talking about, which so I think we need to be careful drawing inferences there.
We don't want to get involved in that. We just want to get involved in the planning application before us. But the issue had been raised about whether or not this was appropriate development, and you have provided an answer in the context of previous decisions and the approach that the council has taken, informed by the decisions of planning inspector. And that is for the committee now to consider. I've had two indications there from Councillor Flynn and Councillor Arnold. Councillor Flynn first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members will be familiar with the fact that for new development in the Green Belt, you need to pass the quite stringent, very special circumstances test. Now, I appreciate this is an existing development, but obviously it is quite a considerable uplift. Clearly, being a community centre, one would assume that this is likely to be doing something good for the local community if this new dining hall and garden is developed. Are officers able to say anything about the sort of public policy aims behind this application?
I think there's two issues there just wrapped together. One is around, for me, the good, and the other bit is around whether or not there needs to be special circumstance with regards to an extension to a building in Greenbelt.
In terms of considering whether it has a wider community benefit, obviously that is a consideration for us, but it isn't a overriding factor in the decision that officers make. And in terms of whether very special circumstances are required to be presented in this case, page 52, paragraph 145 of the MPPF, which came out very recently in June of this year, states that extensions or alterations of a building that do not result in disproportionate additions over and above the size of the building or the size of the original building are considered acceptable in the Greenbelt, and therefore very special circumstances do not need to be demonstrated. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just to pick up possibly with the head of planning in what you were saying about the 50%. Presumably, if this was approved tonight, could they then come back in years to come and ask for an additional 50%?
Generally, and we have refused applications previously where changes to the original size of the building have gone above, considerably above the 50% limit, or the 50% that has been applied. So when officers are considering the size of the building and size of extensions, they take into account the original size of the building, not the extended size of the building, and any extensions to that are included in the 50%.
Okay, so We had the motion that we go with the officer's recommendations. Anybody? Councillor Ahmed Malana?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to second the motion and go with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much. Can I have a show of hands, please, on this one? Thank you. Noted. Against? Thank you. 2 against. Okay. Thank you very much. That one was approved. Agenda item 9. Number 7, Roundwood Avenue, Stockley Park.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, this application is before you because part of the site is in the Greenbelt, as shown there. It is the access that's proposed that's within the Greenbelt. The other works are all within the envelope of the site and are not affecting the Greenbelt. The access is a very minor alteration. Again, it has no impact or very little impact on the Greenbelt, and therefore we are recommending approval. There are improvements to the landscaping to be made as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do you have photos? Yeah, very quickly.
The addendum sheet, there is a pre-commencement condition, number 5, which is recommended. The applicants didn't want a pre-commencement condition, so they submitted additional information relating to that, and therefore we're recommending that condition is removed and that the numbers, plan number BP001 revision PO3 and the method statement is added to condition 2 to ensure that they comply with those plans. This is the additional plan, just showing tree protection measures, and these are sort of minor works that are proposed to the building, and the additional access just in this element A position here. Yeah, just go to the photos. So, in essence, it's at this point.
So the new access is between the 2 lamp posts. So the point for members to note here is it's in the kind of, not in the dense sort of landscaping. It's in the heavily maintained bit of landscaping, which is, you know, it's not.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
Well, I'm very happy with this one, so happy to move officer's recommendation.
I'm also very pleased to see continued investment in this part of the world and its attractiveness here. Councillor Borough. Thank you very much. Show of hands, please, on this one, everybody. Thank you. Number 10, Goals Soccer Centre, Springfield Road, Hayes.
Very quickly, Chairman, again, this seems to be a Greenbelt committee, but this is before you because the site is in the Greenbelt. It is an advertisement on the existing building, very small. That's the existing elevations, and the proposed. So you've got the additional sign is this one. The goal sign is existing. I can show you on the photographs. That's where the sign. So that goal sign that you saw is existing, and the proposed sign is in this position here. So very little impact again on the Greenbelt. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Happy with the officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chandel, you next.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Show of hands, please. Everybody, thank you. Number 11.
Again, very quickly, as I said, this seems to be a Greenbelt committee. This is again before you because the site is in the Greenbelt. Very minor development relating to a emergency generator. The site is, I can just go directly to the plans. The generator is located, if you can just see the small red square here in this position. Nearest residential properties are here and here. These are about 55 metres and these are about 75 metres away. So it's unlikely to have any great impact. generators can be noisy, so we are recommending a noise condition, and again, that may well need to be amended, so I would request delegated authority for the head of planning just to amend that so that it is reflective of not being too restrictive but allowing them to use the generator. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. This is effectively replacing condition 3, which restricts use, to a noise condition, so that if it were used it couldn't be heard, and we delegate that to the head of planning. Okay. Councillor Duncan?
As part of that, would there be acoustic fencing around it?
It is sunk, and therefore, if I can just show you the photograph, it's positioned
behind a wall, isn't it?
Yeah, so it is in essence behind
that palisade.
Behind here and below, so it's not going to be very visible, and it's going to be difficult to put an acoustic fencing because the building.
I just wondered whether it should be, completed to the top of it. That's all.
I think a noise condition would be probably more beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay then.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was just going to say that this is below ground level anyway, so that should mitigate some of the noise anyway. No, I move the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
As amended. Thank you. Councillor Brightman? Thank you. Show of hands, please, on that one. Everybody? Great. Thank you. Number 12. 692 Uxbridge Road, Hayes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This is a change of use from retail to a mixed use comprising restaurant and takeaway use. The site is within the Uxbridge Road town centre, within the primary shopping area, where members will know that we require a minimum 70% to be in retail use. There is an up-to-date survey completed very recently, as recent as yesterday. And that information is set out on page 2 of the, so not page 2, page 3 of the addendum. If I do point out, the amount of retail has increased, and may be a reason being that we have these restrictive policies, but also the vacancy rate has also increased. I have to point that out. But if I can point out that there is a vacant unit with takeaway use permission already existing within not very far from this unit, so it would seem sensible to take up that option rather than to lose a retail unit in this position, and therefore your officers are recommending refusal on the ground set out. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
Move officer's recommendation.
Appreciate that. Councillor Bira. Thank you. Show of hands, please. It's everybody. Thank you. 13. No, we've done that. Sorry about that. 14. Junction, land junction adjacent with Falling Lane, Royal Lane, Useley.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a replacement phone mast, and as opposed to the first item, the applicants were willing to discuss the issue with us and amended the drawings to reduce the number of equipment cabinets and provide, and therefore we are now saying that this is acceptable. So it's replacing a 12.5 metre high pole with a 17.5 metre high pole and 2 new cabinets. If I can just again go directly to the photographs, you'll see that the site is, so it's located in this position here. That's the existing and proposed, and then if I just show you, so it's fairly much screened or partly screened, and in particular the cabinets are well screened by the surrounding trees and fencing, and the additional cabinets are located close to those existing ones, or that existing one, so that it should be have a reduced impact on the street scene. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
Flynn. Sorry.
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 Councillor Flynn.
It's okay.
My apologies to you.
Strange
Sorry.
transition. Yes. Well, you know, my view is on these things that we are going to have to put them somewhere, and this does seem a more sensible location than some of the other ones we've seen recently. So, personally, I'm happy to go with officers' recommendation on this. Just to, it's a very minor pedantic point, but on the agenda, I notice it's not actually printed out properly. It states, it's obviously someone's copied and pasted the item 12, was it? On the...
We've got that on the agenda.
It's been... okay, fine, ignore
should
that.
have pointed that out. It is amended on the addendum sheet. Thank you.
Fine. But I'm happy to go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ahmed-Willani, you...
Second.
Thank you. Show of hands, please, on... Oh, sorry.
And before we go any further, can I just make a comment about this? It seems to me that when they put the boxes that go with the poles, which they have to have, I know that, some of them are green and some of them are like an off-white. Now the green ones are fine because they blend in for a while, but they fade terribly. Do you think that where they're going to put green boxes in, we could condition it so that, say, something like every 3 years they're redecorated? Because they look pretty awful, quite frankly, but the ones that are off-white or light grey, I'm not sure what colour it is, they seem to be able to withstand the weather that they're going to get. But the green ones are pretty awful, quite frankly.
Can I ask our planning officers not to answer now, but to take that out for consideration? We do need to look at reducing the visual impact of these street cabinets, and there may be enhancements you could make. If that's satisfactory to you, councillors.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is, because, I mean, it's street furniture at the end of the day. We have nice benches, some very nice street benches, and others nice street furniture. Why don't we get them to sort this out so that it stands the test of time?
Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
I just wanted to check that the replacement pole will be going in exactly the same position. In other words, we're not going to have an additional pole that will replace in use terms, but in physical terms as well. So that
it is a replacement of the existing. So this one will be removed and a new one put in its place.
Thank you very much. Now, I've now lost track of what we did. I believe we had it nominated and seconded. Fine. Do we one more. Come there, Councillor.
Sorry, Chairman. We did on the 3rd of September raise this issue of how we can almost get these cabinets to blend in. I think that was the overriding, feeling I got from the committee then. That yes, fine, we've got to have them. It might be quite a few of them, but they need to blend into street scene.
Point has been made and will be picked up by officers. So if we can turn to the vote, please.
So does that need an additional condition or amendment? In other words, that these cabinets be maintained?
Well, we won't make policy on the hoof here. This is something that officers need to look at and take forward in the future, in my view.
Myself and Mr. Ryan would be quite happy to share what we come up with the Chairman and Labour lead.
Absolutely.
Because part of the benefit of that is you're otherwise you won't get to see what we've come up with, so that you can then remind us if you don't see it on subsequent applications.
Okay. No, it's not. It was a good can of worms to open up. We're looking to improve the feel of our borough, and this is helpful, and officers will act on that. So thank you for that. If I can take the vote. Everybody, thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to turn to part 2.